Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The second booster dose is important for your own individual protection.
Second shot sped up. The province shortens the time between COVID vaccine doses. And
we're going to put our campfire right in the middle of this place, and we're going to make sure you have a miserable weekend.
We made it very clear that if we stayed, we would probably be killed.
We have people coming here.
Would-be campers claim they faced thinly veiled death threats from another group on Harrison Lake. And
it's going to be one of the most photographed buildings in the city.
Great Big Canvas. A West End apartment tower is getting an artistic upgrade from a well-known Gen X artist.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Anita is off this week. You may be getting your second COVID vaccine shot sooner than you thought. The province announced today it's shortening the interval between first and second doses. Our reporter Tanya Fletcher is here with more. Tanya, what is the new timeline in BC?
Yeah, so BC is cutting the wait time for second doses in half from the original 16 weeks now to 8 weeks for the main age-based rollout. It's all because BC has a steady vaccine supply coming in, and the number of people who've had dose 1 is high enough that the province is confident they can speed up dose 2. Now, the priority will begin with those 70 plus and people who are clinically extremely vulnerable. 400,000 of them have today started receiving invitations to book those second dose appointments. Booster shots are also being delivered already to long-term care homes and First Nations communities.
For some communities, we think of Prince Rupert, for example, where we went in and did the entire community approach. That will happen for second doses, and that will be coming up very soon. For other communities, it's not that easy. For some of the larger communities, the hotspot ones we identified more recently that are larger, it just means that people will receive their invitation to come for their second dose sooner.
Now, this comes as the province surpasses a milestone, the 3 million mark for total immunizations. And let's take a look at how we got here. This looks at the dose of vaccinations by age groups. So for those 90 plus, roughly 9 out of 10 have had dose 1. For the 65 to 89 crowd, it's in that 80 to 90% range. For those 50 to 64, roughly 70 to 79% have had their first shot. And for those in their 40s, it's around 65%. Finally, for those under 30, it's anywhere between 35 to 50% at this point.
Tanya, we also have an update on mixing and matching of vaccines. What should people expect in terms of which type they'll get for dose 2?
Yeah, so Canada's National Advisory Committee, NACI, has updated its guidance on the interchangeability of vaccines. So while sticking with the same vaccine for both doses is ideal, it is considered safe to have an alternative of the same type of vaccine. So essentially, the mRNA vaccines can be mixed and matched. In this case, that would be Pfizer and Moderna.
As much as possible, we are going to try and make sure everybody gets the second dose with the same product they had for their first dose. But we know that some issues with the shipments of Moderna might mean that people who received Moderna in one of the mass clinics, large community clinics, may be offered Pfizer for their dose 2.
And for all of you wondering about AstraZeneca, well, guidance on which vaccine you should get for dose 2 still being determined as BC awaits more study results. Sit tight, she said, but she have said in the past you will have a choice. Bottom line today, British Columbians will be able to be fully vaccinated with both doses by the end of summer. Dan?
Thanks very much, Tanya. Tanya Fletcher reporting live tonight. BC is reporting 378 new cases of COVID-19 and sadly 7 more deaths today. We've now lost 1,690 people to the disease. 286 people are in hospital right now, 88 in critical care. About 62% of eligible British Columbians 12 and older have now received at least a first dose of vaccine, as you can see there. Meanwhile, some indoor faith services can restart as of today. Places of worship are now allowed up to 50 people inside as long as they follow COVID safety plans. This includes funerals and baptisms if they are part of the regular service. The province is also set to announce a plan for overnight camps for youth in the coming days. Speaking of camping, the May long weekend marks the start of camping season for many people in our province. But what happened last weekend to some backcountry campers near Harrison Lake has started their season on a very sour note. Two separate groups say they were threatened with guns in a confrontation over camping spots. Now, as Isabel Regem reports, Agassiz RCMP say they're looking for witnesses.
We're going to put our campfire right in the middle of this place, and we're going to make sure you have a miserable weekend.
It was supposed to be a relaxing long weekend camping trip. Instead, two groups trying to find a spot along Harrison Lake say they received veiled death threats from some partying campers.
He came like 1 inch from my face and just started screaming at me that they have 8 other people coming with shotguns and they're going to be shooting off their guns in our direction, and if it hits us, then that's our own fault. We've been warned.
Samantha Rattan and two friends were looking for a campsite on Crown land on the west side of the lake last weekend. She says access to several vacant spots were blocked by a truck, and the partying group claimed they were reserved for friends.
One of the individuals took off his sweater and said, you know, I don't want to go back to jail, but I'm going to kill someone.
Well, our son was pretty upset. He was visibly shaking and crying and thought it was pretty crazy. We've gone camping before. We've never experienced anything like this.
The Helmer family says they were threatened by the same group after they had already set up their tent. Their 12-year-old son watched in tears.
They were probably armed, and if they saw us in that area, they would eliminate us. They would take us out. And she goes, I wouldn't stop them. I mean, you're in there, we've reserved it. We've been here Wednesday. You're in their area. I would just let them go at you and your family. So I wouldn't stop them, and I don't know what would happen to you, but I'm sure it wouldn't be very good.
Fearing for their lives, they left.
Ashamed that we had to, tail between the legs, let's go, pack up our stuff and leave when we shouldn't have to.
It is frustrating. It goes against etiquette and just, everybody getting along out there.
Matt Ion advocates for public access to public land with the Four-Wheel Drive Association. While encounters like these are rare, he says the pandemic has pushed more people to the backcountry, which can lead to more conflict.
It has been crazy busy.
Rattan wrote a post on social media about the heated encounter and reported it to police. Wednesday, RCMP said the investigation is ongoing and that officers are looking to hear from witnesses.
The evidence that we have is we don't have anything to support there were firearms.
You can't bully and harass and threaten someone just to get what you want over a camping spot.
Rattan and the Helmers hope those involved are held accountable and future camping trips are more peaceful. Isabel Regem, CBC News, Vancouver.
Residents and advocates on the downtown east side say concerns about police are not being handled properly. As Susanna De Silva reports, they're speaking out after more than a dozen people filed complaints, but don't feel enough is being done.
Their rules are there to protect them and the interests of their detachment.
Frustration was front and center as residents and advocates of the downtown east side who say concerns about policing here continue to be ignored.
And there was a hope that in coming together and having a group of people all raising stories about the same officers, it would be harder for the public to simply not treat these stories as credible or worth listening to.
In 2019, Pivot Legal Society gathered complaints from 17 people and brought them to the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner about 2 officers in particular, and allegations came from those who live and work here.
These officers stand out because of how many incidences, how brutal they were, and how much indifference they had towards anyone, whether it was someone who was homeless or whether it was someone who was trying to run facilities.
The investigation was suspended so mediation could be held, but in January, lawyers for the complainants say there was not a resolution.
Many of the complainants showed up at that mediation. They spoke in person and at length bravely to the officers in question concerning the impact of their conduct, whereas the officers in question said nothing directly to any of the complainants throughout the entire mediation.
The New Westminster Police Department is now investigating again.
The VPD do not serve and protect the people, they serve and protect themselves. And this whole process that we're going through only proves that.
But some don't believe that will solve anything.
This should be seen as a great opportunity to find out what is working and what isn't working within the system.
The VPD could only confirm that mediation was held, but that the process did not result in an outcome agreed upon by all participants. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's toxic drug crisis has hit harder during this pandemic, but we're learning today it's our Indigenous communities that have suffered far worse than the rest of the province. 254 Indigenous people were killed by toxic drugs last year. That's more than double 2019's total. Despite representing just over 3% of our population, Indigenous people made up nearly 15% of all poison drug deaths, and that gap is growing. The First Nations Health Authority says increasing drug toxicity, pandemic isolation, and COVID precautions making it harder to support people who use drugs are all factors here. The COVID pandemic has taken a toll on paramedics and emergency dispatchers as well. The union is now sounding the alarm and calling for more mental health support. Emergency responders and call takers witness critical injuries and deaths almost daily, and the union says the added pandemic pressure brought a heavier burden on staff. They say 25% of union members are off on WorkSafe claims or are seeking mental health support. The demand for paramedic stress management teams also rose by 80% since the pandemic began.
As paramedics start to see the end in sight for this pandemic, we are really anticipating a flood or a tsunami of mental health injuries coming in through the door.
Stress, fatigue, and extra workloads from staffing shortages led to more paramedics and call takers burning out. BC Ambulance says part of the problem adding to the influx of mental health injuries is the stigma of mental health challenges and people afraid to ask for help. A volunteer coach at a New Westminster curling club has been charged with sex assault against a minor.
She was forced to touch him. During this time, she was quite uncomfortable and quite scared, and when she went home, she relayed this information to her mother, who then brought it forward to our investigators.
New Westminster police arrested 40-year-old Marcio Leite Cerquino last week. He was released under a judge's conditions that he not contact anyone under 16 years old. Police believe Cerquino had unsupervised access to numerous young people in that club after building trust with their families. The force is asking for any more victims to come forward or for anyone with information to contact them.
There's absolutely no need whatsoever for anyone to carry a weapon on them at any time.
And Vancouver police arrested a 25-year-old man on the seawall yesterday after he allegedly stabbed another man several times. Police said the suspect was skateboarding on the walking path when he ran into a runner. Moments later, two bystanders confronted the suspect about skateboarding on a different path. A third person intervened and was then allegedly stabbed by the suspect. The victim did not suffer any life-threatening injuries. This is the fourth violent incident on downtown Vancouver beaches in the past 4 weeks. In Kelowna, a memorial has been created to honor the 3 teens killed in an overnight car crash. The 3 grade 12 students were all classmates at Kelowna Secondary School, all set to graduate in just a few weeks. The Honda Civic they were in slammed into a utility pole early yesterday morning. Messages of condolence have been pouring in from across the community, including from the mayor, local MLAs, and MPs. Even after more than 120 arrests in the past 10 days on southern Vancouver Island, demonstrations against old-growth logging in the Fairy Creek watershed continue. And as Kieran Outshorn shows us, some are risking their lives for the cause.
All right, so today we're here at the Waterfall Camp, which is just up from Port Renfrew and is just down from the very first camp that was set up to try to protect Fairy Creek. Now, I was here in this camp back in September, and it has changed a lot in that time. In September, there was 1 tent and a few road obstructions, and now there's a whole variety of infrastructure, and there are 9 people today who are entrenched, deeply entrenched, and putting their lives on the line. For example, we have a guy out here, he's on a pole that's extended out over the air, and it's offset the weight with a car that's blocking the road. Behind that, you can see that there is a tripod with a young woman hanging from it. To cut it down, it would, they have to be careful bringing her down. And then throughout the camp, you can see these tarps. There's people working here to take care. There are people who are lying on the ground. They have their arms underground. They're holding onto concrete and steel bar. They're gonna have to be dug out and cut out in order for the police to be able to remove them.
I'm pretty cold right now, and it's a shame I have to be out here taking this action for something that seems like common sense for us. We should protect this life and protect this place.
Now, speaking of the police, they are several kilometers back on the road. They're working their way through obstructions that are there, including rocks on the road as well as cars that are set up and blocking the way. Behind them, there's about another 10 kilometers that the police have totally cut off. No one's allowed access in, and they're working their way up. Now, it's not clear when the police will arrive here, but they are working their way towards it. But the people here say that they are feeling calm and prepared, and they're not going anywhere. Kieran Nelson, CBC News, near Port Renfrew.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Joe, you said it would rain. You did. A lot.
I did.
So way to follow through.
Thank you. Yes, I deliver. And
Indeed.
in fact, I've given us the wettest day for Metro Vancouver, I think, since mid-January. So, yeah, it's a soggy one out there. We're not quite done with the rain yet. Let's just take a quick look at where that low is right now. It's tracking across the province, basically making landfall, if you will, over Port Hardy earlier this evening. The pinwheels of heavy downpours will continue for the south coast through this evening, and you can see that line of thunderstorms tracking across the interior as well. So still looking at a stormy night, Dan, but I've got a summer forecast ahead. Details coming up.
What a tease. Thank you very much, Joe. Can't wait.
You're welcome.
Now, during the NHL playoffs here on CBC, a reminder how and where and when you can watch this show. We will be online every day at 6 o'clock, streaming on CBC Gem, YouTube, and Facebook, as you can see. And then we will air after the hockey game each evening on TV. Those times are going to vary depending on when the game starts and when it ends. You can always watch our show on demand on our website, cbc.ca/BC. In Manitoba, COVID is still a growing and serious concern. Hospitals are over capacity, and some patients are being moved out of the province. How it got bad there, next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. For hikers in Newfoundland, coming across a fresh pile of moose pellets is something to step around. But for one biology student, those pellets are brown gold. She's studying how moose impact forests since the creatures were introduced to the area more than a century ago. So hold your nose, have a look.
My research is very overarching. I have so many different methods. I'm looking at so many different things. But as soon as I say pooping, that's all anyone hears. You know, I don't study directly the moose poop, but that's all that matters. And same with my family. You know, it's, oh, you're studying moose poop. You're the moose poop girl. And so I guess that's who I am now. Hi, my name is Michaela Swain. I am a master's student in biology at Memorial University. So what I look at is how moose are having these cascading indirect impacts that are reaching into soil function. Especially with moose not being native to Newfoundland, you really have to look at how every aspect of their presence is impacting their new habitat. It's pretty hard to miss that right here we've got a pretty good deposition of moose poop. So you can tell that a moose was probably around here in the last few days. From this piece of poop, you can actually see a lot of the kind of woody pieces left over from it eating a tree. Moose do prefer very high nutrient and nitrogen-rich woody species. So moose are taking away nutrients by eating trees and transporting it to a different area. You know, this area is going to be really prosperous for a little while. Changes in nutrient cycling, changes in the insect community on the ground, changes in microbial communities that can help with turnover. I always thought that I would go on and study something super exciting and big, and in a way I am. I'm studying moose. They're super fun and they're really cool, but I'm also studying dirt, which, you know, is a little bit more of, you know, the non-glamorous part, but I love it because from dirt you can learn so much about the health of an ecosystem. The funny thing is I spent hours and weeks out in the field this summer. And not once did I see an actual moose. Yet I feel like I have a bit of a connection with them. You know, I've held their poop. You know, how more, you know, connected can you get? And although I don't see them directly, you know, it's cool. Everything that I touch, everything that I see, you know that it was there.
Fun line of work. Back in a few moments with the worrying COVID situation in Manitoba. Stick around. Well, many Canadian provinces are now making reopening plans. In Manitoba, optimism is on hold for now. The province is extending public health restrictions. And as Cameron McIntosh explains, it's hoping to take some pressure off a healthcare system deeply strained.
Given Manitoba's numbers, few expected schools in Winnipeg could actually reopen next week. Doesn't mean they weren't hoping.
You would like to send them back to school? Yeah. But then the vaccines and stuff.
Arius McKay, like many, now wondering with the case numbers if reopening sometime in June is even worth it.
I'm not too sure if I'm going to be sending my kids back to school, actually.
So these new public health orders will take effect Saturday.
Schools just part of yet another extension of health orders that have banned gatherings, limited retail, and now enable the province to rapidly shut down businesses with outbreaks.
Manitobans must stay home.
Even the Premier admits it's a tired message, but he's sticking with it, asking businesses to move to remote work while resisting calls for a lockdown.
There's another factor. That's the willingness of people to follow the rules. That's a key determinant in the model that public health uses.
Effectiveness of Manitoba's ever-tightening rules is still an open question. Cases are down, but ICUs keep filling up. In fact, patient demand caused this hospital to use a secondary oxygen supply. Manageable, but a show of strain. Airlifts to other provinces continue. 25 ICU patients have gone to Ontario. Saskatchewan will take 5. The province is looking into the death of one whose condition deteriorated just before transport.
One of the things that we've definitely learned about COVID is it's unpredictable and people can change course reasonably suddenly.
Meanwhile, vaccinations are slowing. 63% of adults have at least one shot, but now appointments open to anyone are going unused.
The more vaccine uptake we get, the more we're going to protect Manitobans, the sooner we're going to start being able to look at lifting these restrictions.
It has a waterfront view, but this beachside tower is looking a bit tired. Won't be for long, though. What Douglas Coupland plans to do with it? Next.
The National with George McLean.
Good evening. Joe Clark's Progressive Conservatives have collected enough seats in the election to form a minority government. And form a minority government they will. Pierre Trudeau conceded defeat after watching his Liberal Party wiped out in the West and his own cabinet decimated at the polls. We'll have more on those dramatic developments in the Canadian political picture later on The National. The RCMP call it the largest haul in Canadian history, the seizure of more than 20 tons of Colombian marijuana at Sydney Inlet, British Columbia. 17 people were arrested in the Tuesday morning raid, which was the culmination of weeks of work by the RCMP and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Ray Homer reports.
Okay. This is part of the estimated 35 tons of marijuana seized in this morning's raid, the largest seizure in Canadian history. Depending on what amounts it was to be sold in, the value could be anywhere from $32 to $112 million. Early this morning, RCMP drug squad officers and Canadian Forces men surprised a group of about 24 people who were unloading the marijuana from 2 boats in a sheltered cove north of Tofino on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Authorities seized a small freighter, the Samarcanda, and a cabin cruiser, the Whitecap, both registered in the U.S. The raid followed several months of investigation by the RCMP and the American Drug Enforcement Agency.
The big freighter had come in last night, and we saw it come into the cove, and we sat until this morning at daylight, and we brought several RCMP boats in, and were followed in by a destroyer from the destroyer Coupland from Victoria, and they were unloading marijuana at this point. We feel that there's approximately 30 to 35 tons.
Did you know that these freighters had been, how long ago did you know that this operation was being put together and going on?
We've been working on it in conjunction with the Drug Enforcement Administration in the United States for about a month and a half.
Where did they come from? Where did those two boats come from?
Well, one boat is an American boat, we believe out of Seattle, and the large freighter is, we believe, out of Colombia.
2 people were arrested on board the freighter, the rest scattered into the dense bush. With the aid of tracking dogs, 18 more people were captured, but police think 4 others may still be in the bush. The identities of the people are still being checked, but it's believed they are all Americans. It's expected they will appear in court in Victoria tomorrow. Ray Homer, CBC News on the west coast of Vancouver Island.
Gen X icon and artist Douglas Coupland has a great big project on his hands. He's going to be transforming the outside of an entire building. The Berkeley Rental Building will be his new canvas for a painting commissioned by Reliance Properties. The landmark has been a fixture at Davie and Denman Streets for 60 years. The building is currently undergoing upgrades in preparation for this, an example of Coupland's work.
The building's always been sort of a landmark building, and people know it as that green and yellow building at the foot of Davie. And we wanted to maintain that landmark status, but frankly the colors are kind of dated and not that attractive, and we thought this was a great opportunity to try to keep a landmark but do something new, something energetic and vibrant to kind of give back to the West End community.
Coupland's other work can be found all around the city, from that great golden tree at the corner of Marine Drive and Cambie to the digital orca sculpture next to the Vancouver Convention Centre. There it is, Lego looking. And, of course, the Terry Fox Memorial at BC Place. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Joe, yep, a lot of rain, just like you said. Science.
Yep, a lot of rain. I know, exactly. The forecast all said it was going to happen. I said it was going to happen, and it happened. Look at that.
Tick the boxes.
That was a very, it was a very precise low. They don't always line up like that, but this one came in as expected, and it will exit as expected, I think, too. High confidence in this summer-like forecast around the corner. Let me take you through the system's forecast as that low skirts its way across British Columbia. A high pressure is going to build in behind it, clearing skies out right across BC as we head into your Friday forecast. So some lingering showers tomorrow morning in through the Kootenays, up towards the Peace, maybe some morning showers, but generally clearing skies for your Friday. Mix of sun and cloud in through your Saturday, and a long dry stretch after that. I've definitely made this huge high pressure icon, maybe unnecessarily large, but I wanted to really get the point across that this is a very summer-like high pressure indeed. We will see, again, a few showers across the province, and temperatures are actually a little cooler for most of BC tomorrow, but watch as I take you through the forecast into Saturday. That is quite the jump above seasonal for the weekend, and by Sunday, many locations across BC, including parts of Metro Vancouver, will be hitting the 30s. Yes, heating is on the mind as we get into those warm yellow temperatures, which are the mid to high 20s, Dan. So get ready. A true taste of summer is set for the end of May into the start of June. I'll keep us posted.
Please do. And a good thing, as we emphasized, that rain was actually a good thing and a needed thing.
Absolutely. And I love it when we can start a dry stretch this way.
Indeed. Thanks, Joe. You can always find our newscast online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National with us. See you then.